The Untold Adventures of Biao. Season 1, Episode 6. In the last episode, Mr. Gong and Biao were asked by Joe to help his mother. Biao kept asking Joe about his mother's condition, but Joe kept urging him to go faster. He answered that just go to his house, then they would understand. After going for a while, Joe finally talked about his mother's condition. When his mother finished eating dinner, she got a bad headache. She went to bed and rested for a while. But it was strange that as soon as she laid down, she could not move anymore. Just a moment later, her body seemed like turning into another person, and she kept cursing everything badly. Everyone in the Joe family was so panicked. As expected, just arrived at Joe's house when they heard curses. "If you guys dare to go into my house, if you dare to eat my food, then I won't let you die easily." So bad. My mother started again. Actually, Mr. Gong was also a neighbor with the Joe family for many years, so just hearing the voice, he realized it wasn't the voice of Joe's mother. He knew with certainty that she had been haunted by evil. Mr. Gong was not hesitant anymore and immediately went inside. "Daddy, I invited Mr. Gong to come." Joe's father was a good friend to Mr. Gong. When his wife had a flare-up, he was standing by her side. He was sweaty, and his face clearly showed extreme concern. Not letting everyone wait, Mr. Gong immediately went to the bed to check the situation. Joe's father told Mr. Gong that she had a seizure after dinner until now. She kept cursing all the time, but no one knew whom she was cursing. It seemed that there was an invisible thing pressing on the body of Joe's mother. Her whole body showed no sign of movement. However, it's strange that even her eyes glared. The iris of the eye could not be seen. Her mouth kept cursing some bastard. The longer it took, the louder and worse that the cursing was. It sounded like Joe's mother had done something to offend it. Mr. Gong was very experienced in this, so he didn't show any expressions on his face. He just stood next to her and listened to the insults. The others stood around him. As trusting in and not disturb Mr. Gong, no one dared to say any words. Thinking for a long time, Mr. Gong figured out what was going on. Then he turned his head to ask Joe's father what his wife was doing today. Joe's father replied that she only did the usual household chores like cooking, washing clothes. That's all. Joe saw that his father was drunk and his words were not clear, so he stepped in to speak. "Dad, can you stop drinking? Can't you remember any more details? Today Mom also went picking mushrooms and eat a lot of them." As soon as Mr. Gong heard the word mushroom, his eyes immediately turned to the kitchen where the mushroom basket was lying on the table next to the window. He asked Joe if it was the mushrooms over there. When he first entered Joe's house, Mr. Gong noticed the mushroom basket was stinking on the kitchen table. At that time, he sensed something was wrong. But he was hurrying to check the mother's situation. He didn't have a chance to carefully learn about this basket of mushrooms. "It is true that when I first entered this house, I sensed a strong smell of miasma. So this is it. Let me see what is actually in it." As soon as he finished speaking, Mr. Gong walked over to look at the basket of mushrooms. He took the mushroom to his nose to smell it and examined it very carefully. In his mind, he understood almost everything. "Dad, this mushroom is not an ordinary mushroom. Don't you think it's pretty big compared to a regular mushroom? Is it related to Joe's mother's illness? It's not that simple, my son." Mr. Gong used the force of his hand to forcefully break the mushroom into two. It's surprising when he discovered that there was a black string inside the mushroom. Biao felt extremely surprised by the thing in front of his eyes. Since a kid, he had never seen a mushroom with a black string inside like that. "Dad, what is that string?" Why is it in the mushroom? Are there any conclusions yet? Just calm down. You will know everything in a little while. Mr. Gong told Joe to immediately find the person who was with his mother picking mushrooms that morning. They must find out the place where Joe's mother picked these mushrooms. Only getting to that place would have more clues to cure her. Joe immediately ran over to the neighbor's house to find the one who was picking mushrooms with his mother, hoping to cure her more as soon as possible. Regarding Mr. Gong and Biao, only 2 days since eliminating the evil cat, the two have not had much rest. They had to go up the mountain again. Biao felt a little worried. He asked his father if they had to go up the mountain at night and if they could wait until morning to go instead. Biao's suggestion was rejected immediately. Mr. Gong was afraid that Joe's mother could not hold it until the next day. Mr. Gong asked Biao to prepare the lights, and then they went up the mountain together. No matter how uncomfortable and anxious Biao felt, but with his dad's determination, Biao finally had to go to the mountain again. And so the four of them went up the mountain in the night. But after only walking for a while, Biao's annoyance and anger were gone and replaced by his confidence. Biao, the way up the mountain at night looks scary. Don't worry. Here I am already. It turned out that everything had a reason. The one with Joe's mother picking mushrooms this morning was Zhan Ni. No wonder why Biao had changed his attitude. Zhan Ni was the one that Joe found and asked to show them the way. Zhan Ni, walk behind me. Here I am, there would be no devil dare to touch you. If any of them do that, I will let them regret it. Mr. Gong could only shake his head at his son. Being with Zhan Ni, Biao didn't seem tired at all. He smiled and kept talking all the way. He didn't feel as unhappy as he was at home. On the contrary, he even felt the way to the mushroom picking place was so short. It just took a moment to arrive at the location. Zhan Ni pointed ahead and said that was where she and Joe's mother picked mushrooms that morning. The four of them moved closer to it together. Our Zhan Ni has a super memory indeed. If it was us, no one could remember where it would be at all. Leaving Zhan Ni behind, the other three people climbed up ahead and found a place full of grass. It was true that there were all kinds of mushrooms growing here. Zhan Ni added that Joe's mother said since she found it first, then all the mushrooms in this area belonged to her, no one could touch it. The three people heard what Zhan Ni said and they almost laughed out loud. But considering it, if everyone picked those mushrooms together, Joe's mother would not have become so sick like that. After all, Zhan Ni's story made people feel more sorry for Joe's mother. At that moment, Mr. Kong went forward and stepped on the mushroom-filled soil. He even used a lot of strength to kick down the ground. Everyone looked confused at him. After just a few kicks of Mr. Gong, there was the sound of collapse. Wait until the old man took off his leg that everyone could see it through. There were broken wood pieces below there. Looking closely, they discovered a pitch-dark hole. Everyone looked carefully, then suddenly discovered a truth that made everyone shiver. Under the wooden pieces, there was a human skeleton. They also found that underneath the rotting coffin and the skeleton, the mushrooms were overgrown. From the moment they discovered the horrifying scene, Joe and Zhan Ni immediately retreated backward. Only then Biao realized that his father soon knew everything already. This kind of mushroom grew only in places with coffins and corpses. This is the dead mushroom, also known as the mushroom of the death. It only grows in places like this. Biao, do you think if an ordinary person can eat this mushroom? My godness. How could a mushroom grow in horrible places like this? Look, it grows out of the skull and on the coffin as well. It's gross. After looking at the mushroom, Mr. Gong threw it away, bent over the hole, and dug it up. Biao watched his father's movements but still did not understand what his intention was. Mr. Gong pulled out from his pocket a short bamboo tube covered by a red cloth. He tore off the red cloth and told Biao, "The things I'm going to do are not simple. Only experienced people know how to do it. You look at it carefully and try to learn it." Mr. Gong took out a piece of fresh meat from the bamboo tube. He showed it to Biao and then threw it back into the tube. He explained that it was a piece of fresh chicken. To some creatures, this was an attractive bait that could not be resisted. After that, Mr. Gong carefully left the bamboo tube on the skull and then instructed everyone to stand back and wait for the surprising results. Everyone did not understand what was going on. They just listened to Mr. Gong and stood away from the hole and observed. Biao started to show impatience, so he asked Mr. Gong what he was trying to do. However, Mr. Gong appeared to be calm and did not explain anything. He only said that Biao observed it carefully. Although Biao felt so annoyed that his father did not say anything, he still followed Mr. Gong's words to keep his eyes on the target. Biao was born in a coffin of a grave, so he had yin-yang eyes since a kid. He could see very clearly in the dark. Just watching the target for a while that he found something happened. In the dark, the rotting skeleton suddenly moved. Biao was terrified and wondered how a rotten skeleton could move. But Mr. Gong was still quite calm and reassured his son. Dad, the skeleton is moving. Is this the legendary white skeleton? It's so disgusting, Dad. You dumbass, don't make noise. Keep watching. Where is your courage when asking for exorcism? Mr. Gong's words reassured Biao. He regained some courage and continued to look at the target. He was still in a deep, dreadful expression at the scene of the skeleton's movement. At that moment, with his visionary eyes, Biao discovered that there was an incredibly huge centipede that went out of the skull. Just a few seconds later, another centipede appeared. These two centipedes were red and very big. Seemed like those two were being attracted by the chicken in the bamboo tube. Very soon, those two centipedes got into the bamboo tube and fit it neatly. Biao finally understood his father's intentions. It turned out that Mr. Gong wanted to capture those two red centipedes. Dad, those two red centipedes have entered the bamboo tube already. Well done, hurry up and grab it, don't let it run away. Biao thought that catching those two centipedes was simple, so he rushed into it without any preparation. But as soon as he about to leave, his father reminded him that they only had this chance to do. There would be no other chances. When he heard that, he told himself to be more careful. Biao understood that these two centipedes were closely related to Zhou's life, so he did not dare to be careless at any steps. He cautiously approached, took the red cloth. After long consideration, he finally laid the red cloth on the ground next to the bamboo tube. After that, Biao turned the bamboo tube back down to the red cloth. His speed was so fast that the two centipedes in the bamboo tube could not react in time and were locked up. When he saw that, he expressed his pride to Zhan Ni. Do you see it, Zhan Ni? I am so good, right? Biao assumed he could handle these two red centipedes by himself, so he immediately boasted to everyone behind. Zhan Ni showed admiration, but Mr. Gong did not care. He kept urging Biao to return to cure Zhou's mother. On the way home, Biao wanted to get closer to Zhan Ni. Still, the conversation between Mr. Gong and Zhou made him even more distracted. Zhou, is your father still drinking? Is he still unable to stop it? Yes. After a few days of quitting, he will be in it again. I am so sad about that. Along the way, Biao could only speak to Zhan Ni a few words. He kept being distracted by the story between his father and Zhou. Last time, he almost lost his life to the fox. But he still didn't quit drinking after that. He determined not to change. Don't worry, that fox will no longer dare to come back here. Everyone took Zhan Ni home first, then the three of them quickly got back to Zhou's home to cure his mother. As soon as he entered the house, Mr. Gong immediately found a pot and poured 2 red centipedes into it. Everyone thought that Mr. Gong would probably use these 2 centipedes for cooking medicine or soaking some wine. However, unexpectedly he did nothing and brought them straight in front of Zhou's mother in amazement of everyone. "Dad, those 2 centipedes are very poisonous. Are you sure to use it? Is that too dangerous?" "Nonsense, you don't know anything. Stand aside for me to work, watch and learn more." Mr. Gong took Zhou's mother's hand and put it directly into the pot holding the 2 ferocious red centipedes. The 2 ferocious centipedes immediately bit on her fingers. Biao knew his father was a fearless person. But when he saw the sight of 2 centipedes repeatedly biting Zhou's mother's finger, he was scared to death. "Dad, you have to think carefully before doing anything. You have to think about how you will have to hold and take care of your grandchildren in the future. You dumbass. This is called use poison cure poison." Mr. Gong showed his son little by little. Biao, after being told by his father, gradually came to understand the purpose. He began to listen more carefully. His father pointed out that the poisonous substances in this world were born to counter each other. These 2 centipedes were born in the skeleton, so it is the most effective remedy to cure the dead mushroom. After Zhou's mother was repeatedly bitten on her fingers by 2 centipedes, the fingers turned black. The toxin did not spread throughout the body but only appeared a black line along the arm upwards. For more than half an hour, the black line on the left arm darkens and appears another black line. The new line also runs along the arm, and eventually, it accumulated all of the poison in the middle finger. Mr. Gong saw that the time had come, then approached the bed and pricked her middle finger with a needle. Black blood spilled out like floodwater. Just a moment filled half of a pot. Mr. Gong kept it bleeding until the blood turned red. After that, Mr. Gong got out of bed and told Zhou that he had finished curing Zhou's mother. "Don't worry. You two can go to sleep now. Everything is fine." Indeed, the mother's expression returned to normal. She was no longer cursing wildly. Mr. Gong explained to Zhou and his father that the mother would accidentally break the coffin while picking mushrooms. Therefore, the soul of that corpse haunted Zhou's mother and took revenge. That was the reason she kept cursing. Mr. Gong explained it carefully. "Tomorrow morning, you two go up the mountain and bury that body properly. Remember to burn some votives and say sorry to them." Zhou and his father listened carefully and thanked Mr. Gong so much. Struggling all over the night, Mr. Gong and Biao finally got home. "Dad, we cured their mother. It's reasonable that we took them a little money. Why did you refuse? Do you really want that? Do you want me to be like the doctor in the city, taking a lot of money for just tiny things? No, I just want them to make up a few of our efforts." Then Biao asked his father about the fox story. His father explained that it was just because Zhou's father drank too much that he was targeted by a monster and nearly lost his life. But Biao wanted his father to tell in detail. Biao was quite angry. Because of that story, it made Zhan Ni and him unable to talk much. Mr. Gong strictly forbade Biao from having any intentions with Zhan Ni. It's ending another day of exorcism for the two of them,